You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy M., where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy M.
Episode 40, Speak Up with Jessica Schiller Silverman. Meet my friend Jessica of Mozen Wellness, a seasoned corporate finance professional originally from Florida, who tells her brave girl story of conquering panic, anxiety, and depression to where she is today, living her purpose as a transformational business coach living in the Bay Area. I know that you'll love her energy and passion for the work that she's doing today. She shares how she dealt with feeling like a misfit and how she has worked through those difficult emotions to become her most authentic and healthy self. Jessica, an avid podcast listener herself, is a fantastic guest, and I know you'll see why she's such an inspiration to me and to so many others. She talks about taking the leap of faith from the world of venture capital, where she helped fund other people's dreams, into the world of entrepreneurship, where she's living her soul's purpose. She explains how she created her platform and how it's helping others live their soul's purpose. We talk about busting the myth of the starving artist and teaching women how to move beyond the emotional aspects of creating a platform. She talks about how her business has evolved over the past 4 years, where she teaches her clients what she's learned through her own personal reinvention. Using her business background, she's leveraged all aspects of herself to work with her clients. She has group programs, online courses, and workshops that she offers. She's currently working on her first book as part of the Hay House Writers Program, and I can't wait to see what she creates. She talks about her perspectives on money as energy and how infinite and abundant the universe really is. You'll love her book recommendations, The Compound Effect, and Women Who Run with the Wolves, and what she loves about both of these books. Please join me in wishing Jessica a very happy birthday today as we publish her Brave Girl episode on her birthday. Now let's go and meet Jessica. So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Today I have Jessica Schiller Silverman with us, and she is all the way on the West Coast and I am on the East Coast. So welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you, Tracy. It is a pleasure to be here and so lovely to be on this show. I must add that, I've interviewed on other podcasts with guests that I've never met in person, but I've had the pleasure of meeting you in person. So this has a very special and sacred energy. So thank you for inviting me to be a guest on your show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know a little bit about your backstory, but not a whole lot. I know that we have been in different programs together over the years, and I think we met in person probably 3 or 4 years ago when you were going through a lot of really big changes. So I think I know that you were in the accounting and finance world, and I think you came from Florida, and that's about the end of what I know about your story. So tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Sure. I'll kind of rewind a little bit to 3-4 years ago, maybe a little bit before that, just to kind of give you some clarity as to what brought me here to the Bay Area of San Francisco. So I spent 15 years in corporate finance, really in a deep state of depression, really difficult to get out of bed every day. Of course, that led to kind of a whole physical and mental breakdown. I was 80 pounds overweight, and some people don't necessarily know that, which is why when I started my path, I was inspired to be a holistic wellness coach, because it was all about revival and kind of this journey that I went through. And so I met my husband, and this is all part of the story, in Chicago. So yes, born and raised in Florida, always felt like a misfit. Like I saw the Bohemian Rhapsody movie at the end of last year, and that whole Freddie Mercury energy of just being a misfit and being out of place, and like, this is the band and the family for the misfits. Like, I really felt connected to that, and that's really why I left Florida. I just felt it wasn't really home, and I was on this quest to be in a place where I felt like I could be myself. And I guess that's when I really started on the path, moved to Chicago, lived there for 6 years, still working in corporate finance, met my husband. And I remember this moment where he said to me, I just couldn't get out of bed that morning. I couldn't go to work. I had a terrible panic attack and I was crying. And he said, I hate to see you like this. Like, I just want to see you happy. And he was looking around my room and he saw these paintings that I got from my travels. I was an auditor for about 4 or 5 years to the Bay Area, and he would see the Bay Bridge and the California flag. And he's like, why do you have these pictures of California everywhere? And that was sort of my indirect vision board, right? By having the artwork in my space. And I said, because I know I'm going to move to California one day. Like, I know I'm going to live in San Francisco. I just know this is a part of my path. And so kind of fast forward to about 3-4 years ago, I said, it was about November-ish. I remember Thanksgiving, because we went to his, my now in-laws in Ohio for Thanksgiving. And we had planned to move, and everyone's like, that's crazy. You guys don't have jobs. Like, you're going to move to the most expensive city in the United States, San Francisco, without a plan. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. I mean, I moved to Chicago with 2 suitcases, whatever fit on Southwest Airlines. I had nothing. I didn't even have a place to stay. I kind of stayed with friends for a little bit, couch surfing. And that's just who I am. I'm just kind of a rebel and a free spirit like that. My husband, not boyfriend at the time, not so much. He's more of the logical brain, and that's why we balance each other really well. So we moved out here 4 years ago, actually. Exactly at this time. It was the weekend between Christmas and New Year's. We packed up a U-Haul, drove cross country. Really fun trip, probably the best week of my life. It was just so liberating, right? And freedom is really the spirit of my life and kind of the work that I do now. And so I spent a year in venture capital, working here in San Francisco, commuting 3+ hours a day, about an hour and a half. That's the traffic here. We lived in Walnut Creek at the time, drove to San Francisco, which, funny enough, is why I love now interviewing on podcasts, because it's a huge part of my story. What did I do all that time sitting in the car to get through all that monkey mind and the depression, the anxiety, like going to work, going to this place that honestly I called a glorified prison. They watched your every move. It was very male-dominated culture, just the complete opposite of freedom, right? In a workspace. That was just the culture there. And so I did a year of that, and I was at that same point that I was in Chicago. And I get goosebumps saying that. Same conversation. Again, it was a year later, so a week between Christmas and New Year's. We had 2 weeks off. And it was that day, right? New Year's Day, I went back to work after the New Year's holiday, and I told my husband, I can't do this. I just can't do this. Like, I've been listening to these podcasts, and there are so many people that have stepped away, that took a leap of faith, that knew that they had something within them that they had to share in the world. They have a purpose. And I said, this is what I'm here to do. I just felt this deep calling to literally just take my Christmas bonus. So yeah, I had 3 months worth of rent, ideally, to live off of. And I remember somebody, and I don't know who it was, but this really inspired me on a podcast I listened to. She said, you have 2 options, right? So you can take that leap of faith, dive into the deep unknown. Let's say worst case scenario happens, you end up on the street, right? You can always go back to what you're doing before, because you've got the education, you've got the background and finance, right? That's why I went into it. It's a very logical and tangible profession that's always needed, especially, right, tax time. And so knowing that, that always just comforted me, knowing that, you know what, worst case, if all else fails, and thank goodness it hasn't, and I'm here 4 years later to tell you this story, that I haven't gone back to corporate finance, knock on wood. I still have nightmares about it, of course, because I took that leap of faith. I took that knowing that, yes, worst case, I can always go back to what I'm doing, but the potential for greatness, the potential to grow this empire and this purpose. And really, I always say that, the day you're born is the day the universe decided it needs you, right? You're here for a reason. And now I know why. And I've only continued to grow and to blossom that. And now I'm blessed to help other women take that step, take the transition, not to say you've got to be crazy like me and quit your job full time and, not know how it's all going to work out and pray and meditate on a mountain, but to slowly ramp up, to kind of build your launch and slowly kind of take off in learning, what your purpose is, what you're here to do, and how to create, sort of your platform on social media, how to start slowly unearthing your story as a way to connect with others and inspire them in whatever it is that you're here and you're meant to do.
Wow.
Sorry.
Wow. No, I'm blown away by all of it. To be this woman that was in venture capital and corporate finance and audit. And I mean, that's an intense world. And just, you know, what I know of you is you're just so soft and spiritual and kind and energetic. And, you know, it had to be like a round peg in a square hole. But now so as you've kind of taken that leap of faith, you're out there now. And so the types of things that you do now is, do you have group programs? Do you have individual clients? Like, what is it that you're really actually doing, I guess, is the best way I can ask the question.
Sure. So my focus right now, and of course as an entrepreneur, right, there's different seasons kind of based on where you're at in your life, right? So when I started, as I alluded to earlier, I was strictly a wellness coach, right? Holistic wellness, strictly one-on-one work, you know, helping women lose weight, get healthier, you know, be more active. Of course, I think it's 100% mindset. So the whole mindset behind that, right? 'Tis the season, it's January. Why can't people stick to a healthy lifestyle? Right? It's a lot of mindset, right? And doing and learning how to build habits sustainably. So that's where I sort of started. Mm-hmm. That's actually what Mozen means, right? Mozen wellness. It's a biblical term for scales and balance. And then it was interesting because the more I evolved on social media, and you know, I'm very vocal on social and I'm sort of all over the place, even though physically I'm not sometimes, which is what I help other women do. I found clients coming to me for everything but that. And I thought it was funny. And that's actually what I teach my clients now. They're like, oh, but I want to speak to everyone. And I'm like, no, just speak to a specific person. And you'll find that all these different women from all walks of life, even with different challenges, but at their core, the challenge is the same. The challenge is the same. And so I found all of these women coming to me saying, you know, yeah, it's amazing you teach women how to basically revive themselves and to come alive. So my Facebook group is called Alive with Schiller Silverman. But at the end of the day, they're like, how did you start your business? How do you do what you do? How do you have the way, this presence online where as you speak, it's like, I feel you in the room, even though I've never met you. You know, how did you set up your website? How did you build all the platforms? So I started with one-on-one work. And then I really felt this calling. I feel I'm a teacher to teach in a group setting, to really impact like a collective. And so then I evolved into a group coaching program called Live Your Vibrant Life, which I launched a couple of years ago, that was really based on my personal story. Like I thought about, okay, from the spirit of who I was, this girl sitting in a cubicle, auditor, feeling depressed, you know, and anxious and just hating my life every single day, to the point where sometimes I debated, you know, not necessarily killing myself, but why am I here? And is this really what life is all about? Like, is this it? Like, because if it is, like, I don't really care about living this life, you know? I mean, it was just terrible to think about that. So who did I come from that point to where I was, right, 2 years ago when I wrote the program? And I summarized that in 8 weeks, right? A whole 8-week immersion of all the key components of how I revived, right? How do I live my vibrant life? You know, it's adequate sleep and proper nutrition. And of course, the whole spiritual connection, you know, knowing your purpose and, you know, all of those things that were key to my revival and sort of reinventing myself. And then same thing, more women come, how do you do your business? How do you do what you do? I started doing that one-on-one with clients, you know, teaching them. And I said, this is my next course. So 2018, every year I try to have one big birthed offering. And that was Freedom and Flow, which is a group collective teaching women and entrepreneurs, whether they're in a corporate path looking to transition, or they're like where I was, where I stepped away from it all. You know, yes, I was in a program, but then when I was done with that, I'm like, well, now what? Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, do I focus on a website? Do I focus on social? How do I link my email list to, you know, social and a course platform? Where do I host that? And how do I embed videos? You know, all those things that a lot of us, especially spiritual women, get stuck on, you know, all the techie speak, even though I do actually really love it. And so that's what I did. You know, it's a 16-week program, really taking you step by step from the moment of, let's say you quit your job or you even have an established business and you're like, I'm not making money. Because let's be real, if you have a quote business and you're not making money in it, it's really not a business, it's a passion. And so how do I turn what I love into into a business, into something that's making money. Because honestly, a lot of people fear making money, and that whole conversation of how can I be spiritual and ask for money, but that enables you to be who you are, right? To be and do the work that you're here to do in the world, right? And money is energy. And I remember reading Marianne Williamson's book, The Law of Divine Compensation, where it really hit me at my core that yes, the universe wants this for you. The universe is infinite in terms of your possibility to attract abundance, right? Be that financial, be that in relationships and in wellness. It's just a matter of, right, tapping into the right frequency. And so that's where my business has evolved. So now I kind of have two umbrellas, right? I've got the life piece, how to revive your life and your wellness. And then I've got the business piece, which really they're one and the same, because I always say when you're an entrepreneur, it's an extension of your life and your life story. But I do have those two offerings, still work one-on-one, but a lot more intimately, because as you know, I'm very soft and spiritual and very, very giving and love to give wholeheartedly. And honestly, there's only so much energy I can give in a one-on-one setting while still working my other courses. So Live Your Vibrant turned into self-study. Freedom and Flow is a live collective. Then I have my one-on-ones. And actually this year, which is really magical that we're interviewing at this moment, because I remember you, Tracy, as being the writer. And I remember when I met you and she's writing books, and I have goosebumps now I'm saying about it, because ever since I started my business, I've been talking about it. I know writing is my passion. I've had many women come to me for that. Can you review my content? So all my clients do, you have this way. And I'm like, how can I continue to blog and be on social and not put a book out there? And I remember telling people, I have a book in me. I have a book in me. So this year I'm like, enough is enough. And literally I started it last week. I'm writing my book. Really kind of based on the whole freedom and flow concept. How do you kind of debunking the starving artist myth, that to live and do what you want in the world, you have to, starve, right? You have to not be able to enjoy what you enjoy, and you can't ask for that much money, or you can't live a life of abundance. And really just kind of debunking that whole myth and teaching women how to do that, step by step, how to set up your own business, how to set up your platform, how to share your story with vulnerability, how to really open up. Because I always say it's more the emotional aspects of entrepreneurship, I think, that are challenging than the logical pieces, right? It's really, you get to know yourself at such a deep level that no other profession or job will teach you, right? As being an entrepreneur, riding the highs and lows, and doing the work. I couldn't do what I do unless I did the work on myself first. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. And I just decided that this is the year, that I'm writing my book, that I'm putting it out there. I'm part of Hay House's Writers Workshop program.
That's great.
Because I'm inspired by all the Hay House authors. I mean, Deepak Chopra is my greatest mentor, as, are many of the other Hay House authors, of course, Marianne Williamson and, all the other authors. So that's kind of where I'm at now in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. So do you feel like the Bay Area and that move to San Francisco was the right thing? I mean, it seems like
yes,
absolutely.
Yes. That's actually, I forgot that piece of my story because I got so excited telling it as I always do. That's why I always felt this calling. I think subconsciously this is, the spirit of starting your own venture, right? I mean, I started Venture Capital, and that's where it kind of clicked. Hey, I'm helping other people literally funding their own dreams while I have my own. And I remember my mode of therapy through corporate is I had a notebook, and I would just journal about all these dreams and all these desires and going through my own spiritual path. And I used to listen to lots of webinars, when I could, and I wouldn't get caught because I told you we were watched every move. But that was my outlet. I'd open a Word doc and I would just write, and I'm like, well, hey, they don't know what I'm doing. It could be, some kind of document for a client. That was really my outlet, and just starting to share my story. I would go in the bathroom and post on social media, I was like dying to get out of this cage. I felt like a rat in a cage. And definitely that's what brought me here, that kind of free spirit, that bohemian movement. And it's funny because when I started my business, yes, I do have clients all over the world, but most of my one-on-ones are in California. So I just think it's, funny how that works. I don't think it's necessarily because I live here. I just think it's kind of that free-spirited movement, in the state of California.
Yeah, well, and back to where you were saying how you felt like a misfit, like I would have never characterized you as a misfit, but like if that's how you truly felt, but now you're in this environment where you can just be free to be who you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's funny you say that because you look at me, right? And I look like, maybe the listeners don't, but I don't look that way. You know what I mean? Like I don't have crazy hair and I don't have tattoo, right? Like what you think of like somebody as a misfit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But inside I was, right? And that's what I've actually started writing about in my book, is how I was trying so hard at a young age to fit into the outside world that I really lost who I was, right? I really had no idea who I was deep inside because I was always trying to fit in, right? Or I would speak to somebody or be in a conversation and like I could tell somebody wasn't listening, and I would just beat myself up like, you're an idiot. Nobody cares about what you have to say, right? And I think that's what kept me quiet for so long, because I just thought that, there was nothing really unique about me. There was nothing really different. And I think that's why I felt like so much of a misfit, when I've learned that it's really not about having this crazy story of, drug or addiction. I mean, yeah, I had depression. Yes, I was overweight. But it's those like little intricate details about your story that really make you you. Like we talked about at the beginning, like what did you do as a child, right? And kind of rewinding that inner child. And like, of course you do what you do today because of that. And that's what I started documenting in my intro for my book is, all the professions before I became an accountant, what I wanted to do. And as I was writing it, it all made sense. I wanted to be an actress. Why? Because that's what I felt like I was doing. I was putting on a mask. I was playing all these different roles of who I thought society wanted me to be instead of really being myself. Then there was a period where I wanted to be a journalist because I love to document and I'm all about truth and being real. But then I realized that industry, right? I won't get into that in detail, but we know, right, how journalism is today and kind of the facade that goes on there. And then I'm like, you know what? Finance, it's tangible, it's practical, right? We all need to know how to manage our own personal finances, which of course, the shoemaker walks around barefoot, right? That just because you work in the job doesn't mean, that you are good at managing your own personal finances. But that's how I got into what I did, because I just thought it was practical and it was logical. But I'm anything but that. I'm really anything but that. And that's kind of how I feel like I'm a misfit, because, every time I do these crazy things, people are like, but, how do you know? And do you have a plan? Or even in entrepreneurship, right? This time of year, I get in conversations on social, like, oh, what's your launch plan? And I'm like, I don't know, figure it out as I go, and like, that's really how I've, continued to ride the waves of my business. And you know what, it works well for me. It doesn't work well for everyone. Do I have some structure? Of course, right? I mean, that's balance, right? You've got to have somewhat of a foundation to kind of get everything moving. But within that, right, and that's just kind of the inspiration behind freedom and flow is, yes, have that flow working in the background, but laced within is freedom, because that's why, I wanted to step away from my corporate job. I didn't feel free. I didn't feel free to be myself. I didn't feel free, time-wise. Like, yes, you have to be here from this time to this time. And yeah, maybe you get a couple hours in the evening or on the weekend to live your life, or you get a vacation for 2 weeks a year. But I'm like, that's it. Like there's gotta be another way. And that's why I do what I do, to inspire other women to know, like, yes, there is another way. Right? First, it starts with the conversation that you're having with yourself every single day. If you don't think it's possible, then of course it isn't, right? But I know it. I've heard it. I heard all these stories, and I was like, hey, if they did it, I can do it. I ran a marathon 5 to 6 years ago. Like, that's crazy. Like, if mentally, and that's all mindset too. I'm like, if I could do that, honestly, I told myself I could do anything. And that's what carries me through, really, the waves of entrepreneurship and kind of the day-to-day, and as I continue and grow and evolve in my business.
Yeah. So one of the things that we had been talking about before we kind of got onto the podcast was your perfectionistic tendencies or ways. So I think a lot of women have that. So talk a little bit about that and kind of what you've come to understand around perfectionism.
Perfectionism is, honestly, it's anxiety, right? It's anxiety. It's things have to be a certain way or else they can't, right? And from a young age, I always had that mindset, and actually wrote about this in my book too, but I was always an all or nothing person. My motto was like, oh, I can't do this 130%, then why bother? Like, I'm not going to give it my all. And it kind of stems probably from my childhood, which God bless my parents. But if I didn't come home with 100 on the paper, my dad was like, that's all, you got a 92. Right. And so that kind of started that trend. Right. But then as I got older, it was like this, not necessarily excellence, but this perfectionist within me that everything had to be in its place. Right. And even on a day-to-day, now as an entrepreneur, especially when I started with timing, it was like I had to make perfect use of every minute of every day, or I felt like I failed. And it's so ridiculous because I said I wanted to step away from corporate, but I carried the same habits that were ingrained with me in the beginning into my corporate life. Yes, I've got to work between this hour and this hour. Yes, if I don't hit, items 1 through 6 on my to-do list, right, then I'm behind, and it's funny that I say that because in my course every single week I email the ladies, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm behind. I'm like, you're never behind. Like, you will read what you need to read. You will get what you need to at the exact moment. And I was actually at a retreat a couple of years ago where she said, everybody here, and that's what really stuck with me, which helped my perfectionist mind, everyone here will get what they need. Even if you run to the restroom, even if you miss a seminar here or there, the moments that you touch in to this event, you will hear exactly, like the universe will channel in exactly what you need to hear. And that's what's eased me so much in my day-to-day and also with clients, right? Like, oh, the whole notion of you've got to speak to everyone or everybody's got to like you and, right, or engage with your posts on social media. No, I don't want everyone. I want the right people, the right energy. And that's, I think, a lot of what the perfectionist tendencies, time was really a big thing for me. And it's still a work in progress. It's funny, I'm looking at a sticky note I have right above here on my desk. It says, I always have more than enough time. Time is infinite, which it is. If we think about it, time is a construct, the humans created, because back then when the sailors were, at sea, they used the moon, right? They used the celestial patterns to be able to tell time. And then the humans created, right, this 24-hour clock. But who's to say that, there is a right or wrong? Like, this has to take an hour. Right? It's all about perception, right? Time is perception. That's why when you're having fun, for instance, time goes by quickly. And when you're doing something tedious, the time seems to creep, but the time is the time, right? The only thing that changed is really your perspective. And so I think, kind of going back to just perfectionism in general, that's what's really helped ease my mind for those listeners that also feel like they have perfectionist tendencies, is just to release whatever the anxiety is, whether it's about time, whether it's about money, and just to know that it is what you make it, right? It is the perspective. It's truly how you see things is how it comes into fruition. And I know it sounds easy in theory, but hard to apply. But yeah, that's really my greatest piece of advice in terms of perfectionism. And of course, in terms of building your business on social, like if you think about it, and me personally, who do I follow? It's actually people that are not perfect. Because like when I see somebody that has a perfectly manicured video and nails, every point, and it sounds scripted to me, it doesn't seem real. Actually, speaking about perfectionism, one of my favorite podcasts is, I don't know if you follow her, but Candice Kumai, the Wabi Sabi podcast. So Wabi Sabi is a Japanese term for perfect imperfection, right? Meaning that like the golden cracks within the dish, like that's where, right, the quote, that's where the light comes in. It's through those cracks. So, and she's so funny, like she'll get takeout, she'll get fun, she'll be sipping her soup and she's like, excuse me guys, I'm so hungry. And it's like, it's real and it's raw, it's just like, it's having a real conversation with someone and you feel like you're with her in the kitchen. And that's just what's cool. And that's really who I want to embody and how I've been able to kind of shed away that perfectionism and know, like, I don't have to put makeup on every time I go on a live and it doesn't have to be perfect. And so what if I bumble and, the words don't come out right? Everybody gets what they need.
Right. Right. So in addition to the podcast, has there been like a book that has really been sort of like that anchor book that has carried you through kind of highs and lows that you just love or adore. Like for me, it's You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. Like that thing is dog-eared and highlighted, and every morning I read it for like 15 minutes. I just open up to like whatever I'm supposed to read for the day. Do you have something like that as well?
So 2 books come to mind when you say that, and they're 2 totally different genres, which is funny. It's kind of like my 2 personalities. So one is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Mm-hmm. And I think coming from a financial background, it just makes sense, right? Because for me, especially coming from that perfectionist, that all or nothing, knowing that it's all about these small, right? It's a million little things, which by the way, I love that TV show. It's really just to teach you that it's not this one thing. We always make things out to be big, whether we want to make a change in wellness, in a relationship, starting a business, but it's really these small steps. It's these things, these 5-10 minute energies that we put forward, right? And especially now that I'm writing my book, that's the strategy that I put in place is no, I'm not going to lock myself in a room. It just doesn't work for me. Some people it does for a week and write my book. I'm going to take it in really small strides, that compound effect, right? So if I want to write 150 pages, right, maybe I'm going to write a page a day for 150 days, right? Something like that. Just taking it in small increments. Same with health and wellness. You know, why can't people stick to a healthy lifestyle? Because they go from 0 to 60, right? They do these crazy diets, you know, not to say any of them is right or wrong, but they're extreme. And I'm always, being that's who I was, I've learned how to meet myself in the middle. Mm-hmm. And to really just take those small steps, right? And kind of strip it away. Or if you think about a big goal, it's and I do this all the time with my clients, like, okay, you want to be here in 6 months? Great. There's the big goal. But now let's work backwards. What do I need to do every month, every week, and every day? And even every minute, you know what I mean? Kind of strip it down to its bare bones and not necessarily have to put it all on the calendar, but just have that awareness and have somewhat of a plan as to how to do that kind of one step at a time.
Yeah. So what's the other book?
So the other book, I got so excited about The Compound Effect. And then the other book is Women Who Run with the Wolves. So like I said, totally different book. It's funny because when I first ordered it and a friend recommended it, I was like, oh, I'm not really into to fiction books and all these stories, but I've always had a secret love for fairy tales. Growing up in Florida, you know, all the Disney storybook characters, and Once Upon a Time used to be my favorite show. But there's so much wisdom and lessons laced within. And I think I just immediately got immersed in the stories. I think because it really activated that divine feminine within me that was harbored for so long, you know, coming from a corporate path. And I'm glad you see me as soft and feminine. But, when I started, I wasn't that way. You know, I had this male dogma, this aggression within me. And I used to be actually a very angry person as well, which thank goodness I've healed myself through that. But I think that book just gave me permission to be feminine, to be free, to be this illogical, non-conventional, wild rebel in my day-to-day life. And each story kind of unraveled a piece of that in your life. And I thought it was a beautiful book. And I saw 500 pages. I'm like, I'm never going to get through this, you know, because I'm always like, I got to do this and I don't have time to read. But I was so engrossed in it. It was such a beautiful book by Clarissa Pinkola Estes.
Yeah, I hadn't read it ever, and I'd heard about it, and then I just, for whatever reason, I think I was like, it was too big or whatever, and then I think it was 2 years ago I got it, and I was like, where has this book been my whole entire life? I was the same way, and she's such a great writer and such a great storyteller, and I recommend that book a lot too for people because it does activate the divine feminine in such a beautiful way. It really does.
Yes. And it's almost like when it ended, it was one of those like, oh, it's over. Like I just want more and more, which is kind of rare. Like some books you keep like combing through, like kind of when is it over? But this kept me engrossed. And I honestly still to this day haven't found a book that captures me in the same way. It was just the way she writes it. And it's funny, I was mentioning it to somebody on social who asked, you know, what are you reading? And she goes, 500 books. She goes, that you can learn what you need to learn in that book in like new age books that are only like 100 pages. And I'm like, but that just ruins all the fun and all the magic that's kind of housed within it. Like, sure, I could gather all the lessons from there in a 150 page book, but it wouldn't have the same meaning. And the same weight that it does. I mean, you just kind of have to read it to know.
You do. You do. You do. I'm going to get the compound effect. I haven't read that. I do know who Darren Hardy is, so I'm going to have to look at that. Yeah, when I wrote my 2 books, I did the small steps. I didn't sit and, lock myself in the room I did it over a long period of time. I really thought about, you write an outline and then you build it out and then you kind of move it around. And I think that's great that you're in the Hay House Writers Workshop. I've heard really good things about that. And I love all of the Hay House writers as well. And I think it's good that you're kind of tackling that starving artist myth and trying to debunk it and using your story. So my finale question is, I always ask everyone, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done and how does it inspire you today? So I know you took that big leap, so that could have been one of them, but, is there really something that you just really had to, get the courage to do? And maybe it's even something that you're doing now as you kind of move into the next evolution of your business and your offerings. So what would you say that is?
So a couple things come to mind. Of course, like the big leap, right? That's kind of evident. But really, that's not what comes to mind. What comes to mind in terms of me being brave, because for me, it's something that was really hard for me to do. Like getting on social, being vulnerable, sharing my story, like that's very comfortable for me. So I wouldn't even say that, or quitting my job. It's kind of, that's who I am. Like pack up the U-Haul, let's go. But I think it's looking at my bank account. So 2 things, looking at my bank account at moments where I didn't know, especially when we started, like how we're going to make rent, like how we're going to go to the grocery store and be able to buy the foods that we want because, wellness is very important to me. So to buy organic foods or things that maybe cost a little bit more, how are we going to make this work? And just still investing, still donating. Like I take a portion of all the proceeds of my clients and I invest because I believe money is energy. And I've been so many moments at that kind of dire straits, back against the wall, literally don't know how I'm going to make it. And like we talked about at the beginning, just surrendering and just saying, you know what, God, like spirit, universe, like help me continue this mission. Help me continue to do that. And I think just me trusting in the divine. I mean, a lot of us, we know that, but we don't necessarily take the actions that follow that. We still want the logical testimonials and we still want to know that the juice is worth the squeeze, right? So to speak. And for me, I just always trusted that my decision would be right. Not necessarily there's a right or wrong, but right for me, that the universe always shows you exactly where you need to go. And even if it's, quote, a misstep, you always learn something from that opportunity. So I think that would be the number one brave step. And for me, number 2 is honestly speaking on podcasts, getting on Facebook Live, which by the way was the first time I ever got on Facebook Live was the event that I met you at out in the Berkshires. And I was shaking in my shoes. We did this hike, up the mountain. And she's like, you're not leaving this retreat until you get on Facebook Live. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to say. Like, I'm a writer. Like, backspace is my friend. If I say something wrong, I can edit it out. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a speaker. And it was ingrained in me from a young age. My mother's like, oh, you're so much better at writing. Like, I always feared that the words wouldn't come out right, or I didn't know the right words to say. And my writing never matched my speaking. And I just made it a goal within me, right? I know, of course, change happens outside your comfort zone. And I'm like, you know what? The more I do it, it's going to get more comfortable. I've got to be brave, and I've got to keep putting myself out there. Even if I screw up, even if I go, whatever it is, right? Just keep making those moves. And eventually, right, it will start to flow in in a state of ease and grace, and you'll be more in alignment, right, with what you're here to do. So that's been really brave for me, is just to get out there and to keep doing it. And of course, now I absolutely love it. As you can tell, I don't shut up. So it's clearly meant for me. But that's what I always say. And same with my book. Like, I can't tell you, I was so tired of saying, for 4 years, I have a book in me. And I have no qualms about going on social and posting and writing 4-page blogs. It literally flows out of me. Like, I don't really get writer's block. I'm sort of blessed in that way. But when I thought about sitting down and writing the book, I actually wrote a page like a year ago, never touched it again because I sent it to my husband. He goes, wow, that's deep. And then I started to get in my head, like, maybe it's too deep. And what if I can't write like this every single day? And, you start to get inside your own mind. So for me, really the speaking, it's just getting out there. And I say that, for all the women that, come on, there's a lot of silent followers on social, and it's something I ingrain in all the women in my collective. You've got to speak up. And I know this year, 2019, is the year of that. It's kind of this like slow rising of women, like slowly speaking up, telling their truth, giving others permission to do the same. Because I think it always takes one or two to really set the stage, right, for everybody to start sharing their own. But for me, that was really, really a challenging thing, because all I heard growing up is, you have nothing to say. It was that whole fear of like, you have nothing to say, or, children should be seen and not heard. And I was silenced for so long that really to come out and to speak in a live medium has been really challenging, or to speak in front of groups. I do that here in my live community, and I still get nervous, but you know what? I show up. I show up. And I remember I had a call with a coach years ago where she said, carry a crystal in your pocket and say a prayer before you get out there and you speak, and just ask the divine, ask the universe to be there with you. And kind of, as I said before, I always trust that, the words will come out exactly as they're intended to. So that keeps me going and keeps me brave and faithful in what I have to say.
That's beautiful. Well, I just really appreciate you being on the show. And I think you stepped into your purpose. You knew that something was out of alignment, and you just took that leap. And I think it's great that you were listening to the podcast, and that's really, what kind of got you there. And I hope the same with my podcast. I hope that as I interview different women and they share their stories and they share their struggles and their successes, that it can inspire other women to go out and be brave, and to know they're not alone, and to know that, their tendencies, other women have those tendencies, and they've been able to come up with ways to cope with them. So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Is it on social through Mo's and Wellness, or do you have a website, or what would be the best way? Like, if people who've listened to the show want to check you out, where would you tell them to go?
Sure. So 2 places. So on social, absolutely. I nurture my Facebook group every single day. It's sort of my sacred space, as I call it. And that link, it's an easy link, but I'm sure you'll include it in the show notes. It's bit.ly/Mozen Warriors. That's to my Facebook group. And then also I have all of my course offerings in one platform. But the easiest way, and if you'll allow me to, Tracy, to share with your listeners a freebie.
Sure.
And that also gives you a sneak peek of everything else that I do, and how I've evolved over my business. It's called Finding Your Ikigai for Passion and Purpose. And the link to download that freebie is bit.ly/my reason for being.
Okay. And we'll make sure that we put all that in the show notes so that they can link right to it.
Yep. Those are the 2 best ways to find me.
Great. Well, keep shining your light, girl. You are amazing, 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 amazing. And I'm so glad that we met so many years ago and we've stayed in touch. And, I read your blog posts just to stay inspired myself. So you are very, very, what's the right word? Empathic in your writing. And it's very motivational and inspiring. And so keep doing it. I can't wait till your book comes out, and I can't wait to see where you go. And I see you speaking on big stages and sharing your story and really helping other women, shine their light and step into their purpose. So thank you so much for agreeing to be a brave girl tonight. And I just look forward to seeing what 2019 has in store for you, because it's going to be great.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's been really fun. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.